All right, I will proceed like everything's looking good for everyone. So, welcome, one and all. I am absolutely looking forward to this conversation. I think this is something that is going to be transformative for all of us in the not too distant future. Um, it's significant on so many different levels. So, what I'm going to try to do, as I always try to do across the landscape, is discuss maybe the technology at first, because that's sort of what we always see in the beginning. We see how technology, all right, filters into our lives, and then, okay, how do we deal with that legally? How do we look at that? How is regulation going to come at some point around all of this? Or will it? It will, but we'll have to see how that looks and how that feels. And you all being the minds of the future on this, to me, this is by far one of the more exciting spaces to be in. But to each their own, right? So let's start talking about some of the reasons why we're getting into this now, why it's even come up for many people at this point in time. So here we go. So the agenda of the day is really, I have to do this because, and if you've ever heard me do a blockchain discussions, I'm very quickly going to touch on it, because fundamentally what this all is the underlying part is blockchain. So all of this is built on top of this technology that is so important to this new world, this new Web3 world that you probably have heard about. So we're going to talk about that briefly. Then we'll break down what an NFT is, how they work. We'll talk about cryptocurrency, because that is part of all of this. So NFTs and cryptocurrencies are very similar in many respects. And I want to talk about how they're connected and how they're different. So we'll do a deeper dive on that as well. We'll talk about the tokenization of all assets and the future contracts. This is, of course, where I would expect people might lean into the conversation, because the contractual world, the transactional world is going to change, probably fairly dramatically in the next 5 years, at least from my vision. We'll see how that plays out. And I always will welcome questions. I'll probably go for those at the end, just because a lot of this stuff sort of like is interwoven, and I think it's probably best just to handle that then or offline. Then we'll get into Metaverse. Again, how this stuff is coming together at this point in time. And one of the most important aspects, at least from what I see as the legal's future, is around DAOs. If you have not heard about this, highly recommend that you take a gander after I've gone through it, of course, what a DAO is, and I'll explain that, but maybe jump into this space, volunteering, being a part of a DAO, a decentralized, autonomous organization. Sounds horribly, ridiculously futuristic in some respects, but that is the future of businesses, of community, of organizations. And we'll talk about how the early entrants into this space are shaping the way we're going to see this stuff happen going forward. Okay, so let's set the stage. All right, this is where it gets ridiculous, and this is where if you have not gone down this road yet, you have not gone down the rabbit hole, whatever the case is, some of this stuff is going to be so ridiculous, maybe off-putting, maybe just like shaking your head in absolute dismay. And I totally understand that and respect that. But at some point in time, I dare say, we're all going to have to be on board with this. It's going to took me a long time. In 2017, when I first started looking at this, I was like, dumb. NFTs, dumb. But now I see the path, I see the direction, and I understand the value of this. So let's give a little bit of history, context, and then I'll explain exactly what an NFT is. And then we'll go from there. So 2017, all of whatever, 5 years ago, right? God bless. All right, so 5 years ago, an organization came out with the original NFTs, so to speak. They were called CryptoPunks. And you see an example of that on your screen right now. There were 10,000 of these that ever existed. Each one is unique. So every one of these has a distinguishing characteristic or multiple distinguishing characteristics about them. There are humans, there are apes, there are aliens, and there are men and women, and they have different looks. So the idea was that they wanted to harken back to the 1970s and do a punk in the London punk scene. And so they came out with these 10,000 unique pictures, digital art. They're pixelated on purpose. They had better technology back then, but they did this on purpose. And they're generated by computers saying, you know, we want to build this, we want to do that. And they produce these 10,000 unique pieces of art. Each one of these is stored on the blockchain. They all have basically a name, but a unique code that says this piece of art is tied to this unique number, combined of letters and numbers, right? They were given to anybody who wanted them back in 2017. If they had a digital wallet, and we'll talk about a digital wallet in a second. If you had a digital wallet, you go to the website and you say, I claim this, I want one. And it goes into your digital wallet, now it's yours. You have this digital piece of art, it's stored on the blockchain, you know it's yours, you didn't have to pay anything for it except for gas. We'll talk about that, basically a transactional fee. They were free. 2017, this one sold for $100,000 last year. Now they range at a bare minimum of, and I don't want to focus on the money, but I'll give you the idea of why this stuff is taking off. Now they're roughly $250,000 at a bare minimum. They go up to, let's say, $10 million for these things, the originals. You may now have certainly seen the Bored Ape Yacht Club. This was sort of a follow-on to the CryptoPunks and has done actually probably better. So the floor, basically mean the cheapest ape that you can buy right now is 120 ETH, or roughly, what is that? $300,000 for the cheapest one. These were also available less than a year ago for about $50 to $150 each. So you would go to the website when they announced this project was coming out, and you would just acquire one for $150, and then you put it in your digital wallet. Now it's safe and secure on the blockchain, you hope, right? And then it increases in value. Now, why are these increasing in value, and what's the point of this stuff? Well, we'll get into that, but it's about community. It's about people, community, coming up with ideas and doing just unbelievable things based on an NFT. Now, we'll go further down the road in just a second. So what else can you do with NFTs? Yes, it started off with art, but an NFT can be converted or created in almost anything. This is where I beg your indulgence for trying to make this leap of faith. So Jack Dorsey, of course, the previous CEO of Twitter, basically created an NFT around his first tweet. And you must be like, I can go to Twitter and I can go to the original tweet that Jack Dorsey produced, and I can copy that. I can right-click it, and now it's mine. Yes, you can do that. But what he's done is he's basically said, this is my original tweet. I'm going to secure it on the blockchain. There's only one of them available in this form as a digital piece of art, and then I'm going to sell it. So he did so, and he sold it for $2.5 million. All of that money went to charity. Another example, Beeple, who's a known artist in the world of digital art, produced something that eventually sold for $70 million. This is a little context, basically what I've gone through already. I'm not going to read through it. The next slide will go through the definitional component of an NFT. But I want to take a quick pause on this and say, I know this is a major leap when we start talking about NFTs, because you might say, well, I can just right-click anything and save it to my hard drive and then display it. Yes, you can, but it's the same concept as, let's say, a Picasso. So you can have a digital representation of that Picasso. You can have a print of the Picasso up on the wall, maybe in your house or your apartment, whatever the case is. But the asset ownership of that is clear, right? There's only one. There's one of those Picassos that ever existed. And that's what we're able to do going forward, is that anything that's digitally created can now be stored on the blockchain, can be provable, definitively provable, which is unlike anything we've ever been able to do before in the digital world. And that's what's spurring all this on. So we'll get into the metaverse and all that stuff, but that's what's starting all this. So, okay, NFT defined. So a non-fungible token is a unit of data stored on a digital ledger, so that blockchain that certifies that digital asset to be unique and therefore not interchangeable. So this stuff is basically proving out that that piece of art, that unique piece of art, is unique. So NFTs start off with, of course, the photos or videos or audio or that digital piece of art that we saw there. But in the future, it's going to be everything. It's going to be the deed to your car, the deed to your house, and almost anything else you could possibly imagine will be what equates to an NFT. We may not call it an NFT at that point in time. I think we probably will, but that's the idea behind that. So you can have access to that, and this is what I just sort of spoke to. You can have access to any one of these digital files just by right-clicking, but this basically proves ownership to that. We'll talk about the variances on this in terms of the IP around that, and there's different schools of thought on that, which are fascinating to see play out. Some of these contracts that are built say that you own the IP to it once you've bought that particular, let's say, image in this instance. Others say no. So in the CryptoPunk world, the company that built those original 10,000 say we own the ownership of the IP to that. We're going to go to Hollywood and we're going to market this and sell it. In the Bored Ape Yacht Club, you as an individual have ownership of the IP such that if you decide or license to it, you have the ability to actually, I've seen people do this, create beer that has a picture of their particular ape on it. And they're able to sell that. And there's so many things you can do in this space. So, all right, quickly, I'm not going to go through the whole rigmarole around blockchain. I can boil it down to this. It is a foundational change to the way that we look about information preservation on a digital medium. Going forward, most and everything is going to be built on a blockchain in some way. We may not 5 years, 10 years from now talk about blockchain. It's like the code that you sort of built the internet, so TCP, which is basically a code that allows for packets of information to be sent from one computer to another. We don't say that anymore. We'll see if blockchain is the same sort of thing. But ultimately, when you think of blockchain, it's a database. That's all it is. It's been distributed. And so thousands or tens of thousands of computers around the world are confirming that transactions happen such that you don't need these intermediaries. You don't need the middlemen, so it gets creepy, of large businesses necessarily to be that middle person. You actually have the computer. You rely on the computer to be that middle person. So you have one human being to another human being sending something, be it cryptocurrency, be it the NFT, be it the deed to your property. That computer or a network of computers is basically saying, yes, this person owns it now, but you put the funds in an escrow that's on a smart contract. We'll talk about it in a second. Once that's been confirmed and the transaction should happen, then that asset gets transferred to the other person. It's awesome, very cool, but also it's going to be disruptive. It's going to be wild to see. So in the Bitcoin example, which is the original blockchain, so the white paper that came out, as you see over there, has these tenets as a part of that. So peer-to-peer, no central bank authority, relies on cryptography that's been around since the 80s, that banks use, that everyone else uses, right? Nodes agree, so computers agree that this actually happens, and then it spreads that throughout that database, right? So that's something you can always refer to and confirm. That's the key piece to all of this. I won't go, well, I'll briefly go through the example. So if I wanted to send Jennifer a Bitcoin, if I had it, I could do so if I had my digital wallet. She has a digital wallet. I say, you know what, on my phone or on my computer, there's many, many apps that allow me to do this. I have my digital address. She has her digital address. I want to send her one Bitcoin. It's almost like sending an email. I put in one email to Jennifer, click send. It goes to all those computers. Computers basically say, oh, does Joe have one Bitcoin in his wallet? Luckily, yes, maybe, I wish. And then it confirms that she does have a digital wallet. And then at that point in time, the nodes agree, it confirms it, it transfers that money to her. The same thing happens with NFTs. So that's the premise, that's the thought, and that's the process behind this. And then, of course, it adds it to the blockchain. You know, you can confirm it. Other people can confirm that, yes, Jennifer has that one Bitcoin or NFT in her wallet. All right, that's the background. Now, so we go from Bitcoin as the original, creating the blockchain, to cryptocurrencies, which is sort of copying in some respects of the original, leveraging blockchains, plural, because there's many, many blockchains out there. And from that, we get to the point of, okay, the birth of 15,000 different cryptocurrencies. There will be millions of these types of things, of these assets, probably in the next 5 years. Millions and millions, because it's a way for people to monetize or show proof of anything you could possibly imagine, digital or tangible. At least that's my belief. Okay, so where did this all start? So really quickly, before we get into this other part. This started after Bitcoin came the token sales. But I want to use this as an example for multiple iterations of the same thing that we're going through, which leads us to the NFT boom right now. There always is a bust, so be prepared for that as well. So way back in, let's go back to whatever, January 2014, there were token sales. So I'm a company, I have this wonderful idea. I can basically launch my tokens by coming up with the idea, and then people come to my website, they can read the white paper about what I want to do, and then they can invest in that. Used to be you have to go to New York, I'm in DC, go to New York, go out to California, do the dog and pony show to raise the money with all these venture capitalists, whatever the case is. Now, you don't need to do any of that, right? So you launch the website, show the idea, people then connect to the blockchain, send you money, their tokens, maybe Bitcoin or Ethereum, to then you get tokens in return. And we'll talk about that in a second. But this is where you see that exponential growth. So you go from basically January of 2017, it took off, and all of these various organizations or companies or nonprofits came out their tokens, and they raised $23 billion, right? And we soon saw this just dramatic change, and then it all crashed. And so 2018, 2019, everything was like dead for the most part, but things were being built in the background. So like, this is real. It's a really cool platform that allows for larger inclusivity across the world, multiple individuals. Everyone can sort of tap into this if they so desire, if they want to build out in this sort of world, this new world. So what we see next is how this process works. So that idea was the initial coin offer, so ICO. Then came out the IEO, so the initial exchange offering. So instead of you going to a website and building the website, doing that whole thing that I just described, you go to an exchange, so a digital currency exchange, and they would do that for you. You have to give them a lot of your tokens to do this in exchange for them promoting it and then putting it out there and all that fun stuff. And now we're at an IDO phase. So that's initial DAO offering. We'll get to the DAOs in a second, but this is important. So what I want to do is walk through the process that pretty much applies to each one of these three. And I've just updated this. So these are things that are just coming out of my mouth now, but I haven't said it in my head only before, because they're early to this piece in terms of just the way that I think about it. So the ICO. So initial coin offering is a way to raise money. I kind of went through that. So you have a company website, you have a white paper. Here's your purpose. Here's your timeline. So come to our website and you can buy our tokens from February 1st through February 15th. You give us Bitcoin or Ethereum, and we'll give you 10,000 Joe coins. So you're donating. I know you all have already seen these types of things in terms of a lot of the pending regulations / some of the guidance that are given off by SEC or other various agencies in this space. But back then, it was donating funds to the project. Transactions are stored on the blockchain. So again, the intermediary of the blockchain, securing those transactions, which have been so far so good. Users are giving tokens or coins in exchange for their donation of Bitcoin, and those tokens are eventually transferred over to that wallet. And then the mania back then was, okay, so I went to this website, I got my tokens, now I have 10,000 Joe tokens. What the heck can I do with that? I could hold on to these, but what's the value? Over time, people would then port these over, so they would take them to the exchange and say, okay, I have 10,000, and you register that I have 10,000 tokens because it shows up in my wallet, and then you could sell them. So maybe it started off with 10 cents for every token, a Joe coin, and then it went up to $1, it went up to $10. So people made a lot of money back then. Again, it crashed. These things are still going on, but in different iterations. So then you saw the IEO. So instead of launching it through my website, you, of course, you could go to the exchange, do the same thing. DAOs are doing the same sort of fundraising right now, and have become quite the buzz in the space. Okay, so a currency versus a token. As I mentioned in the beginning, there were 15,000 Hold'em tokens that are available right now. Most of these are tokens, but I want to draw a distinction between a token and a currency. Currency is, so Bitcoin is basically trying to be like the dollar or the euro or a yen, or whatever the case is. It's trying to not replace, but sit alongside those spaces. And it does, and it's holding its own. So, right, we saw in 2011, each Bitcoin was $10. And now they've come down a lot, but they're, let's say, $38,000. So a significant change in 11 years, as you see. The token is something that is very important to this space. I'd say even more than the currency, because token allows you to do something, to save something to the blockchain, to the database. So if you want to save a contract, a digital contract to that database, you can do so, but you have to pay a little bit of that token to do so. It's like, the old school token, go through, I don't know, you get on a paid road or whatever, so you have to pay your toll. You got to pay a little bit of a token. You have to pay some money to get onto that road to do so. So that's sort of the difference between that. Now, Ethereum is the biggest of these right now. There are many blockchains out there that are trying to do the same sort of thing around creating these tokens. So the smart contracts that allow you to do the saving of information to the blockchain, all of that stuff is only growing at this moment in time. As I mentioned, you can look at the very top. I know it's small. When I took this snapshot, there were 10,000. Now there's 15,000. There are 393 different exchanges that allow you to trade these. They may not have all 10,000. They have a subset of that typically. The market cap at that point in time was $1.6 billion or trillion dollars. We're now went all the way up to 3 trillion, and we've come back down to roughly the same amount. This stuff is highly volatile, as you can gather. With any new technology, all this stuff is extraordinarily volatile. So now I've gone through this, I'm sure, and Jennifer's gonna be like, oh, I've seen this a few times. This is important. When I first put this together, probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, especially for the legal audience. I hopefully think that it makes some sense and it resonates, but this is the idea of a smart contract, which is ever so important to this entire process. For all of this, for NFTs, for cryptocurrency, for the blockchain. A smart contract basically allows you to save information to that digital ledger, right, to the blockchain. It allows you to interact with it. It's all code-based, but I want to put it in perspective here so that hopefully it makes some sense. Let's pretend that you decide after law school that you want to go down the road of trust and estates, right? So you say, yeah, I want to help out with families and all that fun stuff. But all of you will be, and I know this probably already being challenged by people in your family or friends, whatever the case is, maybe not. Can you do a will for me? And you're like, I'm in law school. Or afterwards, I see this all the time. I have friends who are like, yeah, I have relatives say, can you just write up my will for me? Like, no, I'm an IP. Totally different, but sure, I'll have at it. So you go at it and you say, okay, I will do this. You get the paragraphs, pull it together, you get the template, right? So you further hone and craft that particular, let's call it a trust in this example. That trust, which stipulates certain parameters, right? So, and I'll throw all this thing up. So upon the parent's death, there are 2 kids, kid A and kid B. Both kids need to be married in order to split the estate. If one kid is married, then that kid gets the entire estate. And if the other kid's not, they get nothing. And let's say they both don't get married, then all the money goes to a nonprofit. Awesome, for the nonprofit. So you've written this thing up. It's in a PDF document, right? So you did in Word, whatever. It's done. PDF, it's notarized, good to go. This is where it's going to change. And this is where things will start to take place. So now that it's in that version, you can actually codify it and actually turn that into code so that we can understand the parameters that we sort of just went through. I don't expect, unless you've gone down the road of coding, for you to necessarily understand this, but I'll walk you through it. So it's the idea that each one of the parameters I talked about happen in the code itself. So every day, the blockchain checks to find out whether or not the parents are alive. It goes out to an oracle. An oracle basically is a trusted source of information. So basically what that means is it reaches out to, I don't know, the federal government or maybe Thomson Reuters, public records, and says, are the parents alive? Every day. It's fast, it's easy, checks it, boom. Most of the time they're alive. And then finally, one day it's like, they both passed. Heartless, it says, okay, what's the next task? Next task is to determine if both kids are married. Same sort of query. Goes out, says, okay, boom. It turns out that one kid got married and one did not. And for the sake of argument, all the assets are liquid. It automatically transfers all of that money to the kid and their digital wallet, or whatever the case is, right? All of that is done on the right-hand side autonomously. Blockchain knows, blockchain has the contract, it's been stored, It's been secured. Those parties that are involved in it have access to it. Yes, you could poke a ton of holes in this. I know all of you probably certainly can right out of the gate, but that's how a smart contract works. It's code that is determinant of what? Of something, A or B. So choose A or B. It gets far more complicated than that, but ultimately that's what we're talking about when you hear smart contract relating to a blockchain. Because all the assets that we're talking about are using these types of things in the back end to secure things. So you want to buy this car for, cars are so expensive now. I think the average price of a car now is like $37,000 or $47,000 in the US. So if you want to buy this car, it's going to be $47,000. Put the money in escrow. This person agrees to it. You've agreed to it. Boom. The monies are transferred. The deed is transferred. That's what we'll start to see much more of going forward. So how do you participate in this? I'll be very quick because I'm guessing most of you have either had friends or classmates, haven't used that in a long time, schoolmates, sorry, had obviously your friends get involved in this in some way or somehow. So there are, as I mentioned, there are 363 minimum exchanges around the world. So that if you wanted to port your dollars over to this, just like with Robinhood or Schwab or Fidelity, whatever the case is, you put money in there and then you can buy these assets. First being, of course, Bitcoin, and then, of course, Ethereum, and then now the 15,000 other ones out there. It's as simple as that. Now, it's not a security. Well, right, this is where I lean on you all, but this is the direction of where things go. Every one of our agencies is claiming this as their own. You look at the IRS, they see it as an asset. You look at the SEC, it's security, right? We're not going to get into that part right now at this stage. Coinbase is the biggest. Kraken's another big. Binance, if you're looking at the global landscape, they're the biggest. 450 others, I need to update that. This is where it gets even more evolved in the direction that we're moving to decentralized exchanges, which means that you might say, why would I go, and cryptocurrency is supposed to be decentralized. Why am I going to an old school exchange like Coinbase, which quite honestly is like a bank? It's like Fidelity or whatever, Robinhood. It's a central repository, which is what we're trying to sort of get away from. Yes, so this is the interstitial phase before everything is decentralized. So now you have code-based organizations. Literally, a handful of people came up with something that's code that says when one person and another person get in a room, so to speak, they can exchange a token, where the machine determines sometimes the value, but the participants are saying, I want to buy it at this level, I want to sell it at this level. And then that automatically happens. But there's no central authority like a Coinbase or a Kraken or Binance that sits in between that. It's the code that does it, which again, talk about another disruptor. So you have Coinbase disrupting the banks potentially, and now you have another layer on top of that with the decentralized exchanges that are coming, that are here. So this is what I'm talking about. So when we're talking about the centralized framework, which is what we're used to in everything that we do, the banks, government agencies, nonprofits, everything, media, schools, all that stuff, right? So that's a centralized framework. We're moving to this decentralized framework where everything is kind of in your hands if you want to go down that road. If you're one of these people like, I want total control over everything, this is the perfect world for you. If you're like, it's not that big a deal, then you'll use like a Coinbase going forward. But if you go down that decentralized world, you have this thing, there's exchanges out there. One is SushiSwap, and it's Uniswap, and then there's these other protocols that are out there. Just throwing those up there, just in case you have a desire to go down that road. But that's the concept going forward. Now, how does this all work? So if you have not, I would encourage you, if you have time and the desire, to possibly get one of these digital wallets, because the digital wallets that you control custody and ownership of is really the best way to understand Web3. The NFTs, the Metaverse, the cryptocurrencies, all of that is really under your control if you so desire, but you need to get into that. It's like having an email address or an Instagram handle, whatever it is. It's your identity, it's your ability to control, well, I shouldn't say Instagram, because that's centrally run by Meta/Facebook. But this allows you as an on-ramp into this world. So you download this plugin. Most popular, and there's many of them, is MetaMask. Coinbase has a digital wallet as well, but it allows you to put money or cryptocurrency in there. And then now you can buy and sell things. Not only can you buy and sell the cryptocurrency, but you can also buy and sell the NFTs. And at some point in time, we'll talk about the lands that you'll be able to buy and sell. And you can certainly do that in this space too. I won't spend any time on this. I know they're small, but they're, suffice to say, the idea is that these wallets can go out to multiple exchanges, look for the best rate to get you the best rate. Ultimately, you're paying, one reference here is important, is gas. So gas is the token or a portion of a token that allows you to buy and sell things. So it's the confirmation that, hey, I'm going to pay a little bit so that I can actually transfer money from one person to another, or transfer that NFT from the original minter's website to me. It's just a term of art that, sorry, it's a term that we use that's basically helping people understand how that gets transferred and stored on the blockchain. So the word is just gas. It's like gas for your car, so to speak. Okay, so NFTs part 2. So now I want to go back to where I started. The CryptoPunks being the first. We do the same sort of thing with Bored Ape Yacht Club. The reason why I don't use Bored Ape Yacht Club is because it's too many words. But that's probably resonates more with you all, because I think you've probably seen more of that in the popular culture. But these are the originals, so I still credit them with the setting this whole thing on fire in a good way. So like I said before, 10,000 uniquely generated characters. Attributes are so important, because this is where we start talking about how in the legal landscape, you'll have attributes for assets that you're going to need to quantify and show. And as you build out on the transactional side or on the litigation side, you need to cite this stuff. You need to say, well, this originally was stored on the blockchain. It actually produces this, this, and this. You'll be able to cite specifically that this was, and you'll see here, an alien. And it has these attributes that sit underneath the auspices of that particular thing as an alien. And we'll get into that in a second, but just try to tee it up as an idea. But you see that of the 10,000, there are 9 aliens, 24 apes, 88 zombies, whatever. All right, here we go. So from that comes value. So limited numbers of anything creates a stir and value if people place value in that. So this gets, even when I say it out loud, every time I've said it out loud, it's always a little funny and bizarre. So there are 44 Beanie CryptoPunks. There are 7 that are available for sale right now. The average sale is 200 at this point in time, was 265 Ethereum. Each Ethereum cost today $2,800. So you can do the multiple of that. The cheapest at that point in time, because they've gone up in value, was 800 Ethereum. So what is that? Roughly 3 times 8, $2.4 million for something that was free, with the exception of paying for the gas back in 2017. So you can see as you go down the road, it's not about the money, it's about this concept. The choker, there's only 48. The pilot Hamlet, there's 54 of them. And you could see how the value is placed on this being the first NFT, generative arts, that was ever in existence. That people have said, oh, this is important. And so therefore they placed the value on that. I know it's absolutely preposterous to think about the money that's being thrown at this, but it's also worthy of note that this stuff is going in this direction, for whatever, better or worse. As we move to the metaverse, and we're going to jump in the metaverse in just a second here. We went from that very static, pixelated view to far more dynamic pictures or video that allow for you to manipulate the look and feel of that particular avatar, which is very popular right now. And there's different types of things that you can do in this space too. It's like a robot thing or whatever. Elephants, the human beings, the pigs, skeleton, same sort of idea, but it's moving more towards an interactive environment. You see that you can actually manipulate this, and he's whatever doing. I don't know what he's doing. It's Probably dancing like me. So you get the idea that you can start to do things. Once you take ownership of this little fella here, you can take him into the metaverse. And because he may have, a cool tie, a great beard, he's got the mohawk, faux hawk, or whatever he's got, people place value in that. And you can represent yourself maybe differently because whatever, you want to go down a different road. Now we'll start talking about minting art and why this is taken off and what's important about it. So Ringers is an example of one of the early generative arts. So I think there was 1,000 pieces of art that were ever generated by this individual. He's an artist, and it's AI generated art, but he honed it, crafted it, and then eventually issued these pieces of art. They're called Ringers, and either you're into it or you're not. And I totally was like, I don't know about this stuff. It's definitely more on the modern side. It looks very simplistic, but that's what was produced. These, again, were probably $50 to $100. Now, I guess the minimum is $120,000 for each one of these things. I can give you multiple examples of generative art that is kind of the future of this stuff. You might be like, why are people buying this stuff? Because at this point in time, it's the early entrance of this type of art. Yes, people are probably putting them up on their walls in their house or apartment right now, but where this stuff will take off is in the metaverse. So you'll be like, oh, you know what? I bought one of these Findezas early on. This guy, Tyler Hobbs, is a known person, and I got it for whatever dollars. I sold it for whatever dollars, or I own it, and you can put it into your digital room inside your digital house that we're all going to have in the next several years. As we're going forward, how does this all work? Because this is where I'm going to start to bridge the gap between this stuff and technology as it then gets into the legal space. So with digital contracts going forward, and this is how this stuff works, you can produce these contracts in a way that will make it so that it's minted, which means that it is like an old school minted or stamped coin, right? So it's minted, it's pressed. That's the concept behind it. So in this world, you can go to these sites that allow you to mint art. So let's say one of you is an artist and you want to actually make money off of that. You can do so by going to these sites, and you can say, I'm going to upload a single picture or a piece of art or multiple. Most of the time it's multiple. You can name it, you can create a description around it, create numbers of copies. This is also a big deal, right, in the legal world. So royalties, so anytime this sells going forward, 10%, 5%, 20% of whatever is sold in secondary market always go back to the original artist. Really cool for artists these days in music, as well as classic art here that you might see. But you can actually produce properties. Like I was telling you before, the digital art, you can create properties around something. So that in digital, whatever, in the CryptoPunk world, he's got a mohawk, or she's got a mohawk, she's got an earring. Those are things you put into the property thing. So going forward, as we move into this world around property that you may, let's say you're in real estate, you may have, those properties will fit inside of that. Okay, it is along Route 1. There are 2 specific traffic lights there. It has, air rights to this, this, or this. Those things will fit inside that as it's stored on the blockchain. That's, again, my personal opinion, but I think those are components we're going to start to see built out in this space. So I'm not going to go through all of this, especially with the sake of time, but you can go through steps that help you store this information, this NFT, to the particular site. You can issue this, and then people can then go to these sites, like a place where you can buy and sell these things. So it's a marketplace. There are many marketplaces out there. Clearly, the most popular right now is something called OpenSea, where you can buy and sell all sorts of things. LooksRare came out about 3 weeks ago. And this is just, I don't even know how to explain this. If you haven't seen this, or it's going to seem unreal. So if you've ever bought or sold something on OpenSea, what LooksRare decided to do is, like, we want to bring everyone that's on OpenSea over to our marketplace. So what they did was they issued a coin or a token that's a LooksRare token. And anybody who's done anything on OpenSea, they know, because blockchain says, hey, they bought or sold something. So LooksRare, to try to bring people over, gave everyone, I think it was like 2,500 tokens. That's called Looks. And they had a value. And as people were like, whoa, they should check out this place, the value went up. So it went up from, let's say, 30 cents. Now it's like $5.50. So everyone who was given those now have whatever, 5 times the $2,500. That's insane. So a lot of these early adopters are just giving people money. So in this instance, it's $10,000, right? For just having bought or sold something on OpenSea. And that could be as minimum of $5 that they have done on OpenSea. These are the ways that people are building culture around this space that just opens the door for all of this to come together. So as we get into the metaverse, we're just about to jump into it. When you go to a place like OpenSea, it's not just the NFTs that I showed you. So the generative art, the pics, the avatar art, it's music, it's domain names. So the domain names are being decentralized as well. So as you all know, this stuff like fordham.edu or google.com. There are other domains that are coming out that you actually own that when we start talking about Web3, means all of that's decentralized. So right now, the domain name service, DNS services that we use right now are all centralized, which means that they can actually be attacked and be controlled. And again, it's this world of decentralization. So virtual worlds, we're going to talk about in just a second, but trading cards, collectibles, sports, all of that is moving into this space. Here might be a collection that someone could have in this space, and you might go, what in the world? Yes, that's generative art that someone paid money for. Some of these things are cool because they move. That actually is called a chromie squiggle. It's one of the earlier ones. And yes, people have spent lots and lots of money on that. The first iteration of what we're seeing in this space is literally like internet's not even 1.0, it's like 0.1. So what people are doing is like, okay, what can I do with this? Well, I can create a digital art space where I can show my things online. And then as I go down this gallery, I can actually hover over some of the digital art and it'll tell me who owns it. Yes, this person does own it. They can tell you some information about it. This is a collection from this artist or whatever the case is. So you get the idea. We're starting to bridge physical to the virtual. And clearly that's happened over the last several years in much more of a dramatic fashion. So let's go forward and start talking about the metaverse in the last 14 minutes here. So what the heck is the metaverse? And I think most of you are going to get this right out of the gate. Sometimes I have people are like, nope, not going to happen. It's this idea that pretty much everything's being ported. Look at me. I mean, I'm talking to you from DC, and you all are primarily probably in New York. I'm not sure if you all are in the office or in the office in the classroom or not, but clearly everything is virtualized. We spend, I spend probably 18 hours a day, either on my phone or on the computer. I'm living virtually for the most part. And so as we poured over to this next phase, it was 14 years ago that Apple came out with the iPhone. The next phase is about to happen in the next 18 months, I'd say, at the latest, maybe 2 years. And that is this. So we all know this. I'm an Android guy, sorry. And what that means is that I respect what Apple's done over the years in terms of how they've led the way with some of these things. They're finally moving in the direction of coming out with an AR device. So augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality device. So VR, MR, AR. There's been other groups that have tried this, but we know that when Apple comes out with it, it's going to make headway, and that we're all going to use it. You're going to use it in the classroom. You'll use it certainly when you're practicing. If you go down that road, this is going to be, right? That mask that initially is going to be huge. We're like, this is so goofy. It seems like it's something that kids can play with games on. But we're going to spend more and more of time, our time in this space, both professionally and clearly for fun. And we're going to start off with just maybe a few hours of this, but I think most of the time we're going to spend 12 hours a day in this environment, which means that everything that we can currently see and use and do will port over to that space. So when we start talking about the metaverse, we're talking about people who are buying land right now. So there are multiple metaverses, and there's not going to be a singular metaverse. There's going to be places or flavors that you can go to. And right now, and I did this talk probably for the first time 6 or 7 months ago, and it's always been something that I wanted to talk about, but couldn't because I know that people would laugh beyond belief. But now it's credible to do so. And so So you can actually, back then, you could actually buy land, a plot of land, and those little squares that you see there are either adjacent or not adjacent to roadways, to infrastructure. And if you buy that piece of land, now you can build things onto it. Let's say you're in the community of, I don't know, startups or the community of artists. You can find these communities and then you can build on that. So you can build your house and they're like, I don't know, 75 yards by 75 yards physically, whatever, in the metaverse. So you imagine what you can build on that property. And because you're adjacent to something, you're adjacent to Snoop Dogg's territory, it's going to be worth way more. Or you're close to another known name of whatever, that is value. That is scarcity because there's only so much land that they've said this will ever exist. It's stored on the blockchain. It's provable. All of that. And now you're in this immersive way. You can actually go visit it. You can hang out in it. You can build your property into whatever you want because you literally then start paying for things down there. So Adidas or Nike now has things that you can wear on your avatar in the metaverse, and you have to pay for that. But you can prove that I bought these whatever Adidas sneakers down there and it has a cool style and it's unique because there's only 10 of these that will ever exist. Well, yeah, all of that starts to get pushed down into that space. I can apply the same sort of thing, like I said earlier, the Bored Ape Yacht Club to this same scenario. So it starts off on the periphery where goofballs, maybe like me, play around with this and they're like, all right, what am I doing? This is really silly, but it's interesting and it's intriguing. Then you get people that are like, all right, I don't know who talks to these big wigs like Serena Williams and says, hey, do you want a CryptoPunk? And she's like, sure. And she buys it for $100,000 or $150,000. And then you get like Snoop Dogg or Eminem or whomever. Everyone starts to get on board and it builds this entire culture. So you see the Bored Apes, of course, jump into this space. And then all of a sudden you see Visa. Visa, an organization that clearly prides itself on the exchange of money, primarily whatever in the United States, let's talk about dollars. They went and they bought Ethereum because that's ETH, right? To be able to buy a CryptoPunk. And they spent $150,000 on it. That was a major leap forward in this. This happened, whatever, maybe 6 or 7 months ago. That says that clearly things are changing. As we start talking about DeFi, decentralized finance, I'm only going to spend 2 seconds on this because you're starting to see where I'm going. Basically, anything and everything that is in the financial world is probably going to be ported over to this decentralized world. So cryptocurrencies, the ability to exchange assets on the blockchain, clearly impacts with new financial systems, disruptors. But the cool thing is access to everyone. That's awesome. We're seeing digital dollar in the not too distant future. The US is definitely behind the ball here, but a central bank digital currency, so CBDCs. That means that the dollar will be ported over, and I'm not sure if they're going to do a blockchain per se. I think they'll have to at some point. A lot of controversy around that, but that will happen. This one is a big one. I want to make sure that I have a few minutes to go over it. A DAO. This is the worst naming convention ever. Distributed. It's supposed to be decentralized autonomous organization. I don't know why I wrote that. I need to fix that. These are entities, businesses, all based on contracts via code. Yes, they're all generally autonomous, more or less, once they've been built. So the example that I like to give is it's a vending machine. So with a vending machine now, they're all smart enabled, right? So usually you can use your phone or credit card to get access to that. But what are you doing when you interact with that vending machine? So it takes your money, but it gives you a snack. It uses that money to reorder whatever it needs to because it knows that there's only 20 whatever Hershey's, whatever candy bars that were in that row. So it knows that 20 have been given, therefore it automatically orders that stuff. It also knows when it needs to be cleaned. But as you put that money into the machine, it's a contract, right? I'm giving you money, you're going to give me this. That's how we're going to work this. And so you're putting money into the machine and you're getting a say for also what snacks in the future might be in there. Because if everyone keeps choosing M&Ms, cool, then that's going to continue to populate. Maybe they'll do 2 rows of it because it's so popular. Maybe not the Fritos people don't care for. So the machine automatically determines that. But you have a say in that. So it has no managers. All these processes are pre-written into the code. So the agreements, the contracts are written into that code. that allows it to all play out. This one to me is fascinating. So where does this all come together? So 7 days before one of the only 11 lasting constitutions, the original documents that had been signed, right, by the forefathers, we're going to go to auction with Christie's, I believe. The expected amount of money for that document to be sold was between $15 and $20 million. So beforehand, a bunch of, I think, some attorneys said, you know what, we want to buy that constitution. How can we do this within 7 days? How can we raise between $15 and $20 million? So any of you can do this right now. You set out, like that original ICO I told you about, you set out to say, all right, this is what we believe in, this is what we want to do, this is what we hope to accomplish. You tell people, you know, come to this website and donate whatever token you want, and we're going to issue a DAO token. The DAO token basically says that all members who have this can have a say in how we govern this document, where it's stored, and how much we can actually rate, how much we can pay for this. So in 7 days, they raised $45 million because 17,000 people donated on average $243 to the cause. They then, I watched this live, so dorky I was, went on to YouTube, this auction was live, and there were two bidders going back and forth. You don't know who was the DAO and who was the private person that was trying to buy it. It went from 15 to 20 to 25 to 30 to 40 to $42 million before the DAO ended up bowing out because all they had was $45 million. They needed some of the money to preserve the document, to house it. All of that was set aside. But in 7 days, they were able to pool money together from global population because they had a cause. The DAO was a group of people saying, this is what you all can vote on. So DAOs basically allow individuals to vote on things through a structure, all legally bound and binding. That's the future of these DAOs that are absolutely fantastic. Now, there's a lot to be said on this. There's many DAOs. Any one of you can create a DAO right now. You have to be somewhat careful about some of this stuff, but any cause or any idea that you want to raise money for. I was recently at an event, and I said that in the not too distant future, I see that a franchise, like any franchise in New York Giants or whatever, Jets, or any one of these franchises are out there, will be owned by a DAO. You'll get a huge grouping of people that will pool their money together and then bid and buy one of these things. And you'll have a structure, governance structure that's put in there such that, and I'm not huge into these types of things, but who do you want to play in the next game, or who do you want to draft? They can put that out to people saying, we want to vote on this. And because it's on the blockchain, because it's stored, because you have these currency, the cryptocurrency, which is the DAO token, you can vote on it. And it shows that you have vested interest in that. So basically everything you can imagine is going to be tokenized in some way. Small business, currencies, real estate. I've been talking, this slide I've had for the last 5 years. And in the beginning, I was like, I don't know if I should be saying this stuff, but now it's clear as day. And it's coming out to play. So DeFi is significant. That's just one component of this. You can see how Ethereum has now bypassed Visa in terms of total market cap, and it just keeps going. Computational contracts. So I'm going to hold off on this. That's totally a separate subject, but ultimately what we're talking about is code becoming far more piece of contracts. So code is becoming, dare I say, law at some point in time. We're getting there. So these are my final thoughts, and I apologize. Happy to talk about stuff offline too. Tokenization leads to codification. This is huge, of rules and legal contracts. DAOs will be the norm. Hint, hint, if you have any time in terms of, I know you all have summers and stuff like that, please, if you really want to be ahead of the game, take a gander at this as a side project. NFTs are the on-ramp for all this stuff, but the future is Metaverse, and so NFTs sitting inside that, just representation of assets. That's all it is. DeFi is leading the space. We're talking about the financial world. There is tremendous opportunity for everyone if you decide to go down this road and play with it in fintech and, of course, legal tech. Alrighty. Man, I know that was a lot. questions?